My name is Aiden and I host Leaguecast podcast, the longest running League of Legends podcast. I am a Diamond Tahm Kench top main. I hit my peak of Master Tier in Season 7 playing primarily Blitzcrank, switched to Tahm Kench top in Season 8/9 where I ended High Diamond. I took some time off Tahm Kench when they gutted him and have since returned to playing him in Season 11 with the item rework. I am currently trying to push for the number 1 spot on League of Graph's best Tahm Kench worldwide because I like my arbitrary accomplishments. Why play Tahm Kench? He is a versatile champ that can be played in support, jungle, and what I consider to be his best lane, top. He is an absolute machine in the early game, with kill pressure in almost every lane top. With the current average game time of about 25 minutes, he is a champion that can get ahead in the early game and not fall off before the game ends. With this immense pressure top side of the map created by Tahm Kench winning lane every game, your team has the ability to snowball lanes through unmatched priority. Simply put, Tahm Kench is a support that makes for a better top laner than a support in a solo queue environment. Tahm Kench ability overview. Tahm Kench has a 3-stack passive which allows him to change how his Q and W function. This passive gives him magic damage on hit based on his maximum health. This amounts to 30ish magic damage level 1, scaling up to 160ish late game. This passive allows Tahm to outdamage enemies level 1 and scale into mid game without building damage items. His Q is a quick linear skill shot that applies a heavy slow for 2 seconds. This is your bread and butter ability as it allows you to get in on enemies and stick to them. This ability turns into a stun if it hits an enemy that has 3 passive stacks on them. It consumes the 3 stacks on stun application. The ability also does a ton of damage at higher ranks. His W is the reason why he's strong in professional play in the support role. Tahm's W allows you to eat allies and save them from impending doom, or eat enemies and make them sad as you slowly walk them into their demise. W's cooldown is halved on enemy use and consumes all 3 stacks on use of an enemy champion. This ability can be combined with Q to eat minions or monsters from afar. This is particularly useful when jungling Tahm Kench. Tahm's E stores a percentage of damage taken as Grey Health. This Grey Health is converted back into a heal at a rate based on champion level. This ability can be activated to turn current Grey Health into a 2-second shield. Use this ability as a second health bar when being focused, a way to avoid chip damage in lane, or as a free regen tool throughout the game. Tahm's ultimate is a channeled teleport that takes himself and up to 1 ally with him to a targeted destination. This ability grows in size with ability rank, and so does its macro potential. Reminder that you are unable to perform actions for 1 second after using it, so ensure that you don't ult into your death without being able to act. As mentioned, I believe that Tahm is viable top, jungle, and support, as well as a counterpick mid into aggressive melee AD champs such as Yone, Yasuo, Zed, Talon, Qiyana, etc. In this guide, I will mostly be talking about top lane Tahm Kench, with a small section devoted to jungle and support. Tahm Kench has multiple summoner spell choices in the top lane. Personally, I go Flash TP every game to best utilize my early game pressure. On a champion where you look for cheesy level 1 fights, you want to have a backup plan in teleport to reset the lane if anything goes wrong. I also believe that Flash is necessary on the champion, as hitting Flash Qs or Flash Ws is important to solo killing harder matchups in the game. Some other Tahm Kench mains opt for Ghost over Flash to run down their opponents, some opt for Ignite over TP to increase the early game kill pressure even more. Any of these combinations of TP, Flash, Ghost, and Ignite on Tahm Kench top can work. You'll see all Tahm Kench mains doing what they feel is best suited for their playstyle. Runes for Tahm Kench are straightforward with a couple minor choices. All Tahm Kench mains take Resolve Primary, picking up Demolish, Second Wind, and Unflinching. Going Shield Bash is bait. Please only take that rune on champs who proc it as part of their normal trade pattern such as Camille and Shen. For secondary tree, there's a choice between Inspiration or Precision. I take Precision, picking up Triumph and Legend Alacrity into all melee matchups to give better trading patterns, as well as the potential to clutch close 2v1s with Triumph's heal. Into ranged matchups, I pick up Inspiration with Approach Velocity and Biscuit Delivery. Approach Velocity is needed to get into range to trade with matchups such as Gnar, Jace, Vayne, etc. Always pick up the attack speed shard in the first slot and the appropriate resistance in the third slot. The second slot should be a choice between damage and more resistance based on how hard the lane is. Starting items should always be Doran's Shield plus a health potion. Mythic choice for Tahm Kench is straightforward, with Sunfire being the correct choice whenever possible. Sunfire burns while the enemy is in your W and provides the most wave clear for better split push late game. Chem Tank should be chosen in games where you cannot get on the backline without its active. Frostfire is the weakest of the mythics, but can be picked up in games where you have to play low econ, as the 400 gold saved can help you reach your mythic spike at a reasonable point in the game, and help you get halfway to Bramble Vest. Boot options most of the time will come down to plated steel caps or mercury treads, depending on if you need to reduce auto attack damage or if you need to incorporate tenacity into your build. Other boot options include Boots of Swiftness, as movement speed is your best stat, and Berserker Greaves are the other option if you're not running Precision Tree and don't get value out of picking up either of the tank boots. Armor items will mostly be the same pickups each game. Early Bramble Vest, please finish this later, for healing reduction into Dead Man's Plate. Movement speed from Dead Man's Plate is important to get on targets in the mid to late game. Other potential armor items are Randuin's, Gargoyle's Stone Plate, Frozen Heart, and Zeke's. All of these items are less optimal but have their own uses, from supporting allies to increase tankiness when being focused. MR options are sparser, but Force of Nature should be picked up in place of an early Dead Man's Plate if MR is needed. Depending on the amount of magic damage on the enemy team, you can pick up Spirit Visage or even Wit's End to better combat it. Other items that are viable, but not good in most games, are Titanic Hydra, Knight's Vow, or even Warmogs. Knight's Vow can be picked up similarly to Zeke's if your support does not have one and your AD carry is carrying, as your job will become protect the AD carry rather than engage for the team. Titanic can be a good item if you are a health tank, but costs too much gold and you get it too late into the game after your champ has already fallen off. Warmogs is bad currently in the meta due to Grievous Wounds being so easily accessible, but can be a viable pickup into heavy poke teams. Tahm Kench's ability sequence. There's not too much to say here. Max Q every game, take ult at level 6, 11, and 16. Typically you want to max your W over your E, but you can do it the other way if you are into a hard matchup and you need the gray health regen. You can also take your W or E level 2, depending on how the lane is playing out. If you are not going to have the ability to use your W on the enemy, there is no reason to take it level 2, so instead take E, and level up W at level 3. Your ultimate is a bad ability at rank 1. You should still take a point in it for the chance to use it defensively to get away from a gank, or to use it offensively to get behind an enemy, but priority should be put on trying to reach level 11, where the ult range more than doubles. Tahm Kench has one of the strongest level 1s in the game. To abuse this, every game you should sit in the top lane river or tri-bush to attempt to cheese the enemy with a level 1 fight. If they walk blindly into the bush, you will either get first blood or at the very least blow their flash and potentially their teleport if they decide to recall. You can also do this by hiding in the third bush top lane and wait for the enemy to walk into the middle of the lane before running out and fighting them. When trading level 1, you want to abuse your absurd early game damage and fight them. I usually thin the wave while stacking up grasp and then go for a trade. Trading through minions is fine as Tahm Kench is beyond broken at these early stages in the lane. You can simply take unfavorable trades in minions and still win them with well-placed Q stuns. Early laning on Tahm Kench. Taking advantage of the strong early game, getting solo kills, and making strong trades is important as it allows you to gain a massive lead in lane, leading to you pressuring the enemy laner off any CS for the early stages of the game. Sit between your minions and the enemy and trade with them whenever they come to CS. When your wave starts pushing to their side, make it crash under tower and reset it to the center of the lane. It is typical to get multiple solo kills on your lane during these early levels. The more solo kills and CS lead that you get in the early game, the longer it takes for your champion to fall off and for their champion to come online. Laning as Tahm Kench is a battle of pushing your early game pressure without being punished by ganks. If possible, ask for a gank and counter ganks, as you can win most 2v2s by eating one of the champions in the fight. If your jungler wants to invade, make sure that you are available, as your early game presence can snowball your team to victory. When going for a dive, Tahm should start by tanking the tower, unless your jungler has their own way of dropping tower aggro. With Tahm's E, you are able to tank the tower for a long period of time, and you are able to position to eat your ally out of the tower when you eventually drop aggro. Mid-game for Tahm is usually defined by the point in the game right before your champion begins to fall off. At this point, your champion can tank absurd amounts of damage, run through teamfights directly at the carries, as well as save allies with careful use of your W. Taking the tower in your lane to open up the map and looking for fights around objectives is the way to victory. The lead that you gained from your lane has to be utilized in the form of objectives or teamfights, or else your lead will diminish as Tahm falls off and the enemy top lane scales back into the game. Getting a 1-2 dragon lead, using heralds to bust down outer, mid, and bottom tower, or teleporting bottom to win a big fight are all ways to transition your lead into a team-wide advantage. Late game, you become a split pusher with the main purpose of maintaining side waves. In matchups where you can still solo kill the enemy, you have free reign over the map, splitting wherever you want and holding TP/ultimate to get to fights when they break out. In matchups where you can get solo killed by the enemy, such as Camille, you mostly act as a tool to minimize their side lane pressure with the added bonus of having 2 teleports to their 1. At this point in the game, Tahm Kench is typically weaker than most meta top laners, but using your ultimate to manage side waves or even look for picks by taking an ally with you can be a game changer. Tahm Kench's W is his strongest ability, and the reason he has been nerfed countless times. If you were playing support Kench, you should almost always be using the ability to save an ally. When playing Tahm top, this becomes a larger decision that changes as the game goes on. During early laning, you should be using your Q to proc the stacks for the 2-second stun, as it allows for you to get off 1-2 auto attacks while they are stunned, allowing you to set up for your next Q or W. If you do not have Q up while they have stacks on them, you can use your W and eat them and wait for your cooldowns. It is important to remember that their cooldowns also are timing down whilst inside of you. W should be used to consume these stacks when the enemy is about to get out of the fight or when it is beneficial to eat them over stunning them. Examples of this include when you are about to be stunned, you should eat the enemy as they can't escape, and their CC is now practically applied to themselves. If the enemy has a buff or any lasting ability, you can eat them and wait it out. Examples of this are Nasus, Renekton, Riven, and Alawi, as all their ult abilities are wasted when they are CC'd inside of you. Minor tactics exist with this ability, such as timing your W when Jace uses his W, or Poppy uses her ult, to knock you back with them inside of you. Some champs hard counter your W, such as Gangplank and Olaf with their cleanses, and healing over time champs such as Swain, Mundo, and Vlad, as your W can actually slow down your DPS enough that they heal while inside of you. Your only DPS when using your W is the burn from Sunfire and the percentage max damage from the ability. It is also important to note that during laning phase, using the tilde key can be useful only to target enemy champions to avoid eating minions when fighting in large minion waves. In 2v2 fights, eating the enemy that does the most damage is usually the correct play, but can sometimes save them if your ally was planning on bursting them. Identifying when to use your W and when to use your Q to consume the stacks can make the difference in fights. One tactic that I employ when in 2v2s is I eat the enemy and spam ping where I'm going to spit them out. This allows your ally to throw out a skill shot or at the very least be prepared for them to be spat out. This typically leads to easy CC chains as you can spit them into abilities such as Morgana Q, Rek'Sai Knockup, and Nautilus Hook. Late game, your use of W should typically transition into being an ally saving ability, primarily used on carries in fights. The damage on W does not scale enough into the late game, and using it on enemies is only good if used as a preventative measure to make the fight a 4v4 for a short while. Instead, when the game gets late enough, sit on your carry and make sure to waste enemy abilities and ultimates such as Skarner, Malzahar, and Camille by eating their target. Support Tahm Kench is ironically his designed role and best role in competitive play, but the version of Kench that I'm most unfamiliar with. With Support Kench, you're playing a bodyguard to your carries. For your runes, you should take Guardian, picking up Font of Life, Bone Plating, and Unflinching in the Resolve tree, with your secondary tree being made up of Biscuits and Approach Velocity in the Inspiration tree. Taking Flash plus Exhaust is common on Support Kench to fit the bodyguard playstyle. During laning phase, look to poke with your Q and almost never use your W on an enemy unless it's a one fight, and your W will ensure that the enemy does not get away. Instead, use your stacks to proc stuns on the enemy, and use your W to pull allies out of CC whenever possible. It is not a bad idea to stand behind your ally as Tahm Kench in lanes, as pulling your ally towards the tower can be a lifesaver. Mid to late game, you are focused on sitting on your carries and ensuring that they do not get blown up with proper use of your W. Build tank items such as Chem Tank or Locket into items such as Knight's Vow, Zeke's, Thornmail, Spirit Visage, Deadman's, Randuin's, etc. You want to be a tank that can peel carries and survive getting blown up. Jungle Kench is slow for the current meta due to slow clear speeds, but can find himself at the top of the tier list when the fast clearing jungle meta settles. Tahm Kench's main strength in jungle is due to his unmatched dueling potential and is impossible to deal with scuttle control. Similarly to top lane, Tahm Kench can duel almost all champions in League of Legends, allowing for easy contests on buffs, counter ganks, or scuttles. His scuttle clear is almost impossible to deal with as he can simply eat the scuttle and bring it to behind red buff or near blue buff tribush to cheese it and allow for an uncontestable scuttle clear. Basic Tahm Kench clear involves starting red and spitting it between raptors at 350 HP, applying the damage to all of raptor camp. Continue by full clearing, minus Krugs, to blue buff and contest scuttle as it spawns. If possible, contest the other scuttle or look for ganks and counter ganks, as that is where you'll gain your advantage. Continue to clear buffs and scuttles on cooldown while looking for ganks and invades. I believe that the best Tahm Kench jungle runes are Hail of Blades to easily proc stacks on ganks and invades, picking up Cheap Shot, Zombie Wart, and Relentless Hunter. In your secondary tree, go Inspiration, taking Magical Footwear and Approach Velocity to improve ganks. Build for Tahm Kench jungle starts with blue or red smite, as both are good for him, red for dueling, blue for ganking. This build transitions into a similar build as top lane Tahm Kench, except for your mythic choice is always going to be narrowed down to Chem Tank, as it is needed to get on enemies. There are some Tahm Kench bugs to watch out for when playing him. The first and most common bug being that double-clicking his ultimate in quick succession to quickly teleport across the map will make the ability show as up even when it's on cooldown. This can deceive your allies into thinking that you can ult in and save them when it is not up. Be sure to ping your ultimate regularly so allies actually know when it is up. If an ally clicks to jump in your ultimate as the timer expires, it will put them inside of you, but use your W instead. This bug rarely happens, but is frustrating. When applying 3 stacks to an enemy and using W on them, during the first half second that the third stack is applied, you will not be able to eat them despite the indicator showing all 3 stacks applied. If you are in a minion wave, this will result in you eating a minion. Tahm Kench mechanics, power spikes, and some extra stuff. Tahm Kench is a simple character with simple mechanics, but it is important to understand how these mechanics work. W seems to have a priority on ally champions over minions over enemy champions. This is important to note when trying to use W in minion waves or when allies are near. Since patch 9.2, Tahm Kench's allies can no longer jump into Abyssal Voyage while in combat. This is very unclear to allies while in game, as you can use the ultimate, but they cannot. Your main power spikes as Tahm Kench come at level 1, level 2, Mythic Purchase, level 11, and then level 16. Level 1, 2, and Mythic Purchase spikes come in the form of Dueling Potential, whereas level 11 and level 16 come in the form of Map Mobility, with your ultimate jumping from 2,500 range to 5,500 to 8,500. After level 16, backdoor cheese plays are always an option to win the game, as it acts as a double TP for you and an ally. Q is an interesting ability as it is a linear skill shot with the cast animation. This cast animation is shortened when you hit an enemy champion. If you miss with your Q, you are locked out of all inputs until the entire animation finishes, compared to hitting a melee ranged Q where the animation is less than half the duration. E is an ability that gets its power from proper timing. E shield lasts 2 seconds, so you want to time your shield to absorb as much damage as you are going to take within the next 2 seconds. Shield for too much and your shield will be partially wasted. Shield for too little and the enemy will burst right through it to your health bar. Also, make sure to use E after an auto attack, as the E animation will cancel auto attacks. You can use and cancel your ultimate to proc Wind Soul movement speed buff. This rarely comes into play but can be useful. You used to be able to do this with Zeke's, but the item has since been changed. I did an entire video where I made a tier list of Tahm Kench top lane matchups and explained why champs are hard or easy for Tahm. Check it out here. A tier list like this will constantly change with buffs and nerfs to champions, so apply the general concepts to why the matchups are strong/weak, rather than taking them exactly how they are shown. Best skin. Earth Kench isn't a bad skin per se, but it has nothing to write home about. It reuses assets from Chef Kench and has an ugly model that shares a splash art with a bunch of other Uggo skins. The bib and tiny crown are the only things that save this skin. 5 out of 10 skin. Tahm Kench's base skin is lit. Well-dressed Catfish Boy fits his champion design perfectly. The splash art is awesome as well, 9 out of 10 skin. Coin Emperor is a fantastic skin. Best Tahm Kench splash art, a new stack animation, awesome recall, the best ultimate animation/sound out of all the skins, and 6 wonderful chromas that all look great in game, 9.9 out of 10 skin. Chef Kench is perfection. This skin fucking slaps. The new W stack animation, the run animation with his little knives when you apply 3 stacks, the new ultimate animation, a sick splash art, and when he recalls he sips his soup. What more could you ask for in a skin? Easy 10 out of 10. Thank you for checking out my Tahm Kench guide. If you are interested in any other content by me, I host a weekly League of Legends podcast called Leaguecast, which you can find on any podcast app. I also stream on Twitch, primarily playing Tahm Kench top and producing League of Legends content. You can check that out, twitch.tv/LeaguecastFrost. If you enjoyed the guide, please be sure to like the video and subscribe. Thank you.